You are very welcome along to the Red 78, a Munster podcast for Munster fans. My name is Ruairi O'Hagan. We have a lot to talk about on the show today as we look ahead to the game with Toulon in the Champions Cup. There's both good and bad news on the injury front, and Joey Carbery is on his way at the end of the season. Plenty to discuss, and who better to discuss it with than two Munster legends in Alan Quinlan and Fiona Hayes. Guys, how are you? Good to see you.
Good. How was your weekend, Rory?
Good, not as good as yours, Fiona.
That's true.
The jet setter was off again. Well, there was no match at the weekend, so maybe she was entitled to go on our travels again.
Fiona, though, did get to see one of her teams win over the weekend.
Yeah, I went and watched the old Giants over in New York. So they got a good win at home. Finally, the fans were delighted. They weren't moaning. The last couple of times I was there, they were giving out all game. So it was good to get a positive win.
You must still be frozen. Have you warmed up yet? That game looked bitterly cold, like.
So cold. It was absolutely freezing. But sure, look, a couple of, we'll call them Diet Cokes, always warms you up, don't they?
It certainly gives it a go anyway. As I mentioned, look, lads, lots to discuss on the show today. We don't have any game to review this week, so it'll be a bit of a shorter pod this week, but we are going to look ahead to that game against Toulon in detail. And as I mentioned, a lot of stuff happening off the field as well. Plenty of comments have reached the show as well, Fiona. Doesn't seem to be a lot of confidence in Munster fans heading to France this week.
No, not a lot of confidence, but look, we still have the old diehard Munster fans that always say they can do it. I'll go through a couple that came in. Trevor wrote, injuries still as bad as ever by the sounds of lots of rumblings and rumours of discontent from the camp this week. But there's nothing like a bit of edge to try bring out a performance. Hopefully they're poking the heads off each other in training and Toulon have bigger fish to fry. Killian said it's a big ask, to be fair, especially with the current injury crisis. In normal circumstances with a full squad, we might be able to pull it off, but I don't know if we can this week. Tom Lonergan, Toulon have lost in both previous rounds, one at home, one away. They have also lost 5 in the top 14. We just need to go and do a job for 80 minutes. With the right game head on. Yes, we have the players to do it. Cut the young lads loose. Never forget that win away to Wasps 3 seasons ago. This is an interesting one as well that came in. Quinny, it's your mother, I'd say, be involved in it. The old holy water, we got a lovely picture of someone's travelling. Niamh Barron Mark's had her travelling kit there and a picture of it. Heading to Toulon, have the bag packed and the holy water at the ready. Want this win for the team, if not only for the confidence boost. Been a rough few weeks for this team. To the brave and faithful, nothing is impossible. And Anne Poole is well also said, yes, we can go. Do it. We are looking forward to travelling to Toulon this weekend to shout loud for the Munster boys.
Yeah, plenty to discuss in there. So holy water. That's where we are now, lads.
Oh, and Killian Bushell has the old child of Prague. He wants to know, does it do anything for rugby? Ask Quinny that now. What do you think of that, Quinny?
It can do, yeah. I always like to have the bit of holy water, and Jerry Flannery always had rosary beads and saying his prayers. Guys were different in the dressing room in my time, but bit of holy water, yes, psychologically, and my mother is great for bringing the holy water to all the matches as well, as is Niamh Barron there, and it's great to see that. Look, it's there's going to be plenty of Munster fans there. They'll stick with the team. They'll keep going. I think everybody understands, and the general narrative of the comments and people who have made comments is that, look, the reality is Munster on the back foot here a little bit. They're under pressure. The injury count. And aside from the injuries, I think you're going to a place that, we'll discuss that a little bit more, that has a lot of star-studded players. The squad, the budget they have, they're a very, very powerful side. So we're kind of deficient in certain areas where they're very strong. So it's difficult, but the Munster fans, I'm sure, will make their voices heard again, and maybe the holy water might help. Who knows? You got to keep sprinkling the holy water, and I'm sure Niamh and my mum will be doing that all over Toulon, the stadium, and the players, and anyone that comes near them in the warm-ups, they'll be firing it in. So fingers crossed. Look, who knows? But it is a tough task.
Yeah, and stick the Child of Prague out, lads, if you want. It might not work, but it can't hurt at the same time as well. Fiona, the lads have had a week off, obviously, badly needed as well, considering the run that Munster was on, and I suppose it's given the chance for a few lads to, I suppose, rest up knocks and all that. But like even mentally, I suppose that week off have done wonders for Munster.
Yeah, that definitely would have done wonders. As we've talked a lot about as well, set piece during the last couple of shows, they'll have a chance to really kind of have a look and review their movement, kind of nail down those tiny details that maybe are just a bit lacking. And I suppose another thing as well, I know Roundtree is big on is doing these things under fatigue. So if you have the week off, they'll be able to go hard at the line out. It's not physically, hitting each other as they go, but maybe doing a bit of running or a bit of hardcore fitness and then going straight into that pressure cauldron of trying to get the movement right. And, with that down week, you always get time to fix a few bits and bobs like that. But definitely, I think they'll be a bit fresher, and I think it was I was reading as well a lot on Twitter, a lot of the fans. It's like the bad news keeps on coming. Rory, it was like Carbery's gone now, Klein's out for the season. So while they were trading away, they were breaking everyone else's heart. They're going to have to get a bit of good news together for us soon, I think, and put it out there because look, it was a disappointment week on that front as well with those two guys.
Quinny, when you had a week off as a player, how did you find it? I mean, like, were you going stir crazy that you didn't have a match to prepare for at the weekend, or were you thinking, right, I've had a bit of a chance to rest and a bit more time to practice set piece, isn't it?
I think having a week off, it can be good at times. Definitely when you're through a long run of matches and there's a bit of fatigue there. It's always great to have a week off if you're in a good place and you're winning matches and you're on a good run. You kind of look forward to one last push in the game before you get that break. But a lot of these Munster players have been going kind of hard for 2-3 months now, played 10, 11 games, some of them on the bounce, so it's mentally you've got to try and switch off. I think if you're losing matches, and Fiona will know this as a sports person, if you lose a match, you want to get back out next weekend and fix it and get back to winning ways. But when you're on a tough run and there's a lot of fatigue and pressure on, I think it'd be good just to refresh. So I'm sure the players would have worked on stuff and the coaches this week and tried to heal a few bodies. The bodies that are fit would have been bruised and battered a little bit, and just try and get a plan. It gives the coaches a chance to take a breather really and implement some stuff and maybe have a closer look at Toulon, what their strengths are. I'm sure they'll have looked at the games they've lost this season, the games they've won, where their strengths are, where there's possible weaknesses, and try and refresh everybody. Sometimes when you're on a bad run, a few pints is a good call as well. So I think the players will be a bit fresher this week. Obviously they know the task in hand. So it depends. To answer your question, it can be really good sometimes, but then other times maybe you want to just get going again. But I think in this case, the players needed a break mentally. Look, it's been non-stop disappointments, and you feel that as a player. So if you've colleagues and teammates that can really impact and strengthen your team on Saturday, particularly the top players, the internationals, and you're hearing on Tuesday morning that such and such is ruled out at the weekend, and you've more injuries and you've more knocks. It can be really deflating. So hopefully they're refreshed and they're ready to go this week.
Fingers crossed at the air. Let's talk about the good news on the injury front, lads. First off, Owen Clark is available. Alex Nankerville, Niall Scannell, Joey Carbery, Patrick Campbell all back at training this week, and Fineen Wycherley and Peter O'Mahony both increasing their training exposure this week. Fiona, that is good news that we haven't heard in a while on the injury front.
Absolutely. It's the news you wanted to hear as well. I think the big name in there, I suppose, is Peter O'Mahony with the line-out issues. I know a lot of the tweeters in particular got on to us as well, saying that he will make a huge difference back in that line-out. not that any disrespect to anyone else, but it's just his ability, you know, to control things, his ability off the ground, in the air. He's just a man in those big cauldron games who comes up with the big moves. So he'll be huge. And I think Nankivell as well is someone that I'd love to see having a crack against. Quinn, he'll probably go into detail later on those big French guys and the size of the squad in Toulon and who they have. But he's someone I'd love to see have a go at those centres against Toulon, because his footwork is just amazing. And every time himself and Anton Frisch play together, I think they're building up a good partnership. And we saw, you know, Owen Clark, if we can get him back on the pitch as well, he's someone that can offer a bit. You don't want your hooker, Nine Scannell, who's kind of back training as well. For the last few games, we've had our hookers playing nearly 80 minutes, you know, because we obviously haven't been able to trust the bench to make that. Over in Toulon, there's going to have to be changes to the front row 55 minutes. So it'll be good to have these guys, even if they don't start, they're available to get on and give you a good 30 minutes as well coming off the bench.
Connie, just from reading the comments, people seem to think that Peter O'Mahony coming back in automatically means that the line-out is going to be sorted. Is it that simple?
It's not that simple, Rory, I think, but he'll definitely bring a composure and a calmness there, and a surety that you know, he's world class at line out. At the line out, I think in putting pressure on the opposition ball, but also having that trust in throwing ball on him and his ability and confidence to win line out. So I'm sure this week they would have been, you know, Owen Clark missed the Connacht game. I think he came on against Leinster, played really well around the field, made lots of tackles, had a couple of issues with his throwing. Conditions were horrendous, but you know, it depends what kind of time and work they would have got in together this week. So again, we don't know the Peter trained fully during the week. Is he going to be available? Is he going to start? I think if he is, you've got to get him back in there if there's any chance that he can. But I think I'd err on the side of caution as regards Peter O'Mahony won't be going back into this Munster team with a magic wand and suddenly everything's going to be perfect. I think he's a big boost because obviously he's a leader, captain. He's captained a team for a long time. He's experienced at international level, and he's very calm around lineouts, you know, calling lineouts and winning lineouts. So I think it'll certainly help. Of course it helps. I think Thomas Ahern and Ty Byrne. So if you have Ty Byrne, Thomas Ahern and Peter O'Mahony, you've now three kind of really good lineout players that you can hit, three good options. I think when you're minimized in previous games where you probably have two options, and so he probably bring the best out of Thomas Ahern as well and Ty Byrne and help that whole situation. But look, they're going to be put under a lot of pressure. Toulon have a very big pack. The weather is going to be good, which is something that will help Munster, I think, given the way they wanted to play. I think the last month has been, the last 2 or 3 weeks have been difficult. I think conditions were pretty good over in Exeter, bar a very strong wind. And Munster, you saw what they can do from an attack point of view. So it's 12, 13 degrees, clear skies, the sun is going to be out. So it'll be chilly, but dry conditions, very little wind. So, you know, obviously Toulon have very good attacking players as well. And we'll mention a few of them in a minute. But I think, look, Munster would prefer dry conditions and try and get the ball in and out of lineouts, maybe shorten some lineouts, and obviously get their scrum right, and then try and move the ball and get into multi-phase, because I think with French teams, if you can, and one thing Munster have done pretty well, and even in Connacht, they had more possession than Connacht's control. They probably had more territory, but it's just been accurate in those areas. So look, I think the weather will help them, and Peter O'Mahony certainly being back in, not just for the lineup, but just making decisions, and it'd give people a lift around them. You know what I mean? But it's very careful. They've got to be careful. You can't look to Peter O'Mahony, particularly as a player, and think, oh, just because Peter is back. Yeah. They've all got to up their game here, and hopefully they are nice and fresh mentally and physically, because this game is to keep their European hopes alive, really. And who knows? I think their backs are firmly to the wall, and let's see. You know, maybe they'll get a little bit of luck this week that they haven't gotten the last 2 weeks. It's deserted them with injuries and some on-field stuff. So very tough task. But Peter being back in there, but also having Niall Scannell back in the squad. If he trained Joey Carbery, you know, Finian Wycherley, hopefully being available. Players who the more bodies you have available, the better. You know, John Klein's injury is heartbreaking for Munster again. The news that Joey is leaving at the end of the season, you know, this more negative stuff this week, you know, that's all we've got in the last number of weeks. It's just constant. So look, for me as a player, if I'm in there, I'm going, well, we've two choices here. We can kind of wilt up and die, or we can keep fighting. And you never know, if your attitude is good and your desire and motivation is there, you may come up short with a bit of quality, but you give yourself a better chance. So hopefully that's the mindset. I'm sure it is the mindset for this week. And you know, if they go and ask some questions at Toulon and cause them some problems, maybe they'll start to believe themselves.
And on that John Klein injury, Fiona, I'd imagine we were all the same when we saw the news. We all went, for sake, when we saw that John Klein was going to be up for the rest of the season. Again, just what can you say at this point? Like,
I know, and everybody expected him to come back in and sort out the line out as well for the end of the season. I think that was the mentality. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Look, we saw the performances he's put in last year. I listened to the pod as well. Quinny, you're like always a big fan. You spoke about him every week. Just what he done around the pitch, what he done at line out, what he done at maul defence time. He's just a brilliant player, and to have him missing for the rest of the season, especially I suppose after you're taking that punt on him as well. We spoke about his injury profile, how that was something that kind of stood to him, I suppose, when Munster were looking at who to hold on. But there's nothing he can do. I'm sure they reviewed it. It's a knee injury that he had from the World Cup, and obviously with the timing of everything, they might have thought that, you know, his other injuries, eye injury, wasn't healing well enough. So I'm sure the medical staff have just said, look, let's sort all this and you're good to go 100% then, fresh as next season.
Exactly, yeah. Connie, let's look at this Toulon side, and I suppose the mentality of French teams in this competition, in that you never just know quite how seriously French teams take the Champions Cup. What are you expecting from Toulon this weekend?
The unknown a little bit. Well, that's not entirely true, because it's always difficult going to France. If they get their tails up and get confident, they could punish you. So, you know, if you underestimate any French team at any stage, and that's through my experience of playing a lot of European games in France, where if you go back historically to the back-to-back games in the old format, when, you know, December time was always, or maybe those games, November, December, were back-to-back games. So I remember one time beating Perpignan quite comfortably in Thomond Park and thinking, God, they're not great. And that we were thinking, yes, we get 2 wins here. We go back there next week now, and it's going to be easy enough. And that was probably in my earlier days, and a lot of us in our earlier days. And we went back the following week, and we encountered a totally different beast. They were ferocious. They were horrible. They were so aggressive. The crowd were so you know, loud and noisy, and it was like going into a real cauldron. And I think we lost the second. We won the first game comfortably, and we lost the second game 23-8 or something like that. And it kind of makes no sense. And that's always been the intrigue, those back-to-back games. I wish it was the same as that, because I think it's great for players. On one week you travel, you know, to a place, and then the next week you get them home, or vice versa. And it's a real psychological intrigue as to how players deal with that. And sometimes the results make no sense. You know, I saw Northampton years ago, Leinster go to Northampton with a very strong side, lose, and the following week they beat them by 50 points in Dublin. So lots of games like that over the years have happened for months. But France is crazy, Rory.
Yeah.
You know, even with teams that you think, God, we've gone at times where teams have been out, essentially. They're not going to get out of the group, and you go there and you see that you play against them, and you think, Jesus, they're playing for their lives here, as if it's the World Cup final or the top 14 final. And so you learn through experience that France is always tough, and it is a little bit of the unknown. And the only way you can prepare is prepare that it is going to be really tough. The crowd are going to be on top of you. A couple of refereeing decisions may go your way. And you've got to create your own bit of luck there and your own quality. And if you settle into a game in France and you start asking questions of the opposition, and particularly early on, it sounds very obvious, first 10, 15 minutes of the game, if Munster were to get a score or two, and not necessarily even on the scoreboard, but really make it difficult and be strong and robust in defence and force a couple of turnovers, force a couple of mistakes, well, you're in the game then. It's game on. You can play rugby, because they do rely a lot on that wave of momentum from the crowd. And this Toulon side, you know, if you look, I looked at their team last week. You got Melvin Jamine, played at fullback, Wainakolo, Fijian superstar. He's an incredible player on the right wing. Fainga Anuku, Lester Fainga Anuku, he played at the World Cup with the All Blacks. He's only 23 or 4, big eyebrows raised in New Zealand that he was leaving the New Zealand set up to go to Toulon. Massive money, of course, but he's the new superstar that was in New Zealand rugby. He played at 13 last week for Toulon. And then you've got Duncan Paella, the Samoan centre. That's who played last week. So Fainga Anuku and Paella played 12 and 13 last week, and they're line breakers. They're powerful. They're over 105, 10 kilos, both of them. Gabin Villiers, the French winger, who was brilliant for the last couple of years, has had a few injuries. He's on the other wing. Dan Bigger comes off the bench at half time for a young out half that played. Ben White, the Scottish international. So that's their back line. And our issues are probably up front, really, as regards power. So that's the back line that played last week.